Welcome back, everyone. It's Jacob. Now that Spider-Man Brand New Day has been released, Marvel and Kevin Feige are talking more about the new X-Men movie coming in 2028, and we're starting to get a much clearer picture of the cast. Several major X-Men characters are being cast right now, including Sadie Sink as Jean Grey, Kit Connor as Cyclops, Samara Weaving as Emma Frost, and several other major characters. Marvel is also preparing for more announcements at D23, potentially including the full team and some of the villains. So let's break down everything we know about this new X-Men era. Because this movie is going to launch the mutant side of the MCU after Avengers Doomsday and Secret Wars. And yes, there are Spider-Man Brand New Day spoilers ahead, because what happens with Sadie Sink's Jean Grey directly sets up the new X-Men movie. Kevin Feige has confirmed that the events of Brand New Day, particularly Jean Grey's story, will have consequences that carry into the 2028 X-Men movie. Marvel has done something similar before with Captain America: Civil War. Characters like Spider-Man and Black Panther were introduced there, and the events of that movie directly affected their later solo movies. Jean Grey is one of the most interesting parts of this new setup. Instead of using some complicated multiverse explanation for where she came from, Marvel appears to be making Jean a mutant who was simply born in the MCU. She and her sister Sarah Grey are naturally born mutants whose X gene manifested during adolescence. That's becoming an important theme for the MCU's New Mutants. Their powers emerge when they're young, often causing some kind of disaster because they don't know how to control them. Jean is especially dangerous because she's an Omega-level mutant with potentially world-ending abilities. That's going to be a common thread among the new X-Men. Their powers cause terrible things. They fear persecution, and they don't know what to do with themselves. That's where Xavier's School for Gifted Youngsters comes in. And Brand New Day essentially gives Jean the first step toward that future. During the movie, she does some terrible things, although her motivations are understandable. Eventually, after conversations involving Aunt May's memories and Spider-Man himself, Jean decides that she wants to become a better person and use her powers responsibly. Spider-Man basically gives her the great power, great responsibility speech. The important part is where Jean ends the movie. She's on a bus heading toward upstate New York, potentially toward Westchester, and eventually Xavier's School. So her journey from Brand New Day directly leads into the 2028 X-Men movie. And this is where the new generation of X-Men begins. Jean Grey and Cyclops. Sadie Sink is the big casting announcement as Jean Grey. She's obviously best known for Stranger Things, and Marvel seems to be using this young X-Men cast to bring an entirely new generation of fans into the MCU. Kit Connor has been cast as Cyclops. Most people know him from Heartstopper, but his more dramatic work also makes sense for this role because the X-Men aren't just superhero action movies. At their core, they're character dramas, sometimes basically superhero soap operas. And that is especially true with Cyclops, Jean Grey, Emma Frost, and Wolverine. There's even a funny connection here. Kit Connor and Sadie Sink have both played Romeo and Juliet in different stage productions. So apparently, Destiny wanted them to be Cyclops and Jean. The new X-Men will probably be mostly older teenagers and young adults. Jean is already an older teenager in Brand New Day, so she should be slightly older by the time the 2028 movie happens. This also explains why Marvel isn't immediately recasting Wolverine as a young actor. Emma Frost. Samara Weaving is reportedly playing Emma Frost. She's best known for movies like Ready or Not and other horror and thriller projects. And honestly, she has exactly the kind of energy you would expect from Emma Frost. Emma is also a complicated character because she wasn't originally a straightforward hero. She's heavily connected to the Hellfire Club, and Marvel appears to be setting that organization up for this new X-Men era. There are also rumors that Adam Driver could play Sebastian Shaw. Interestingly, Kevin Feige has joked that one of his annual traditions is offering Adam Driver major Marvel roles and having him turn them down. The most recent major example was Reed Richards. So if Adam Driver really does end up as Sebastian Shaw, Marvel will finally have found a role he actually accepted. Beast and Rogue. Charles Melton is reportedly the leading choice for Hank McCoy, aka Beast. He recently appeared in Beef Season 2 alongside Kaylee Spaney, who is also reportedly being considered for Rogue. Spaney wasn't the first person I would have imagined as Rogue, but she's a fantastic actor, especially after Alien Romulus. And if Marvel is casting Rogue, the obvious question is, where is Gambit? For now, it sounds like Channing Tatum's older Gambit from Deadpool and Wolverine may remain the MCU's Gambit for a while. So don't expect a younger Gambit necessarily to appear in the first X-Men movie. There will probably be multiple mutant-related movies outside the main X-Men series anyway. Ryan Reynolds has also talked about taking Deadpool in more of an ensemble direction, potentially leading towards something like an X-Force franchise. Mystic and Professor X. India Navarrete has reportedly been in talks with Marvel and director Jake Schreier about a role in the movie. She has publicly expressed interest in playing Mystique, although we don't know if that's actually the role Marvel is considering her for. Then there's Professor X. Bill Skarsgård and Christopher Abbott have reportedly been among the leading candidates. Bill Skarsgård would obviously be an interesting choice because he's so associated with horror and disturbing characters. Christopher Abbott is also interesting because he already played the Foreigner in Kraven the Hunter. We've seen actors play completely different Marvel characters before, so that wouldn't necessarily prevent him from becoming Professor X. And remember, people once complained about Heath Ledger being cast as the Joker before he gave us one of the greatest comic book performances ever. So I'm keeping an open mind. Storm. Another major character is Storm. Jamie Lawson is reportedly the leading choice, and she's best known for Ryan Coogler's Sinners. That connection could become important because Coogler is developing Black Panther 3, and he's previously teased bringing mutants into that movie. Storm is especially easy to connect to Wakanda because of her comic book history. She's an African mutant with a long history connected to Black Panther, so Marvel could potentially introduce her in Black Panther 3 before moving her into the X-Men story. Storm is also prominently featured on the official D23 promotional material alongside Spider-Man and Sue Storm, which makes me think her casting announcement could be one of the big reveals at D23. What about Wolverine? This is probably the biggest question. Daphne Keane is reportedly being asked to return as X-23, although we don't know whether that would be for the new X-Men movie or another project. But Marvel is still expected to eventually cast a younger Wolverine. The reason we're probably not getting that character in the first 2028 X-Men movie is Hugh Jackman. Jackman is returning for Avengers Doomsday and Secret Wars, and Marvel reportedly wants to keep using him afterward for cameos and crossovers before eventually transitioning to a younger Wolverine. Basically, Wolverine becomes the MCU's chairman of the board. He just shows up occasionally, gives everyone advice, and then leaves. Eventually, a younger Wolverine can join the new X-Men full-time. 2 is on the new X-Men. The original 1963 X-Men lineup consisted of Cyclops, Jean Grey, Beast, Iceman, and Angel. Marvel appears to be modifying that lineup. Cyclops, Jean, and Beast are already being cast, while Storm looks likely to replace Angel, and Rogue could potentially take Iceman's place. There are still plenty of unanswered questions. What about Nightcrawler, Colossus, Iceman? And most importantly, what about Magneto? The original versions of Professor X and Magneto are returning in Avengers Doomsday, with Patrick Stewart, Ian McKellen, and other classic X-Men actors. Because of that, I wouldn't be surprised if Marvel waits until after Doomsday to announce the new MCU versions of some of those characters. The New Mutant Era. Jake Schreier, who directed Thunderbolts, is directing the new X-Men movie. According to Sadie Sink, filming is expected to begin next year. Marvel currently has 3 movies scheduled for 2028, including Ghost Rider in July and Black Panther 3 in December. That leaves the May slot open, and I think that's where the X-Men movie is going. It would make perfect sense for Marvel to release the first X-Men movie in May 2028, immediately after Secret Wars. That's how you launch a new MCU era. New universe, new X-Men, new characters, and potentially an entirely new generation of Marvel fans. That's also why Marvel is casting younger actors. They want these characters to have room to grow with the audience over the next decade. It's basically the Stranger Things strategy. Introduce young characters, let the audience grow up with them, and build an entirely new generation of fans. And that's probably the biggest thing to understand about this new X-Men era. The classic X-Men are coming back for Doomsday and Secret Wars, but after the multiverse reset, Marvel can establish its own long-term X-Men universe with a younger cast. And D23 could give us a much clearer picture of exactly what that team looks like. So expect plenty of X-Men announcements, especially Storm, additional members of the core team, and potentially some villains. Let me know who you want to see join the new X-Men, and who you think should play Magneto, Professor X, Wolverine, and the other major characters. And if Marvel drops any major announcements at D23, I'll be covering all of them. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one.